My mother-in-law had been telling my husband for years that I was not a good mother. I found out in an argument when he revealed information that could only have come from her. What happened when I saw the messages changed our marriage and his family relationship. There are a couple arguments that start as one thing and become another, that start about what they say they are about, and that at some point reveal that underneath what is being argued about there's something different that had been there for a while without a name. The argument I had with my husband that Sunday night started about our younger daughter's bedtime. And at some point in that argument, he said something he could not have known if someone had not told him. And the only someone that could have been was his mother. My name is Rebecca. I am 40 years old. I am a clinical nutritionist. I have two children, Andres, who is 12, and Paula, who is 8. And I have been married for 13 years to a man named Mauricio, who is 42 and who is a civil engineer. My mother-in-law's name is Guadalupe. She is 69 years old. She is Mauricio's mother and the mother of his two sisters. Our relationship over 10 years of interaction had been what I would describe as functional with distance. There was no open conflict. There was no warmth either. It was the relationship of two people who respect each other for the man who connects them and who have tacitly decided that that is the way this can work. What I had not known was that behind that cold functionality, there was a parallel conversation. A conversation between Guadalupe and Mauricio, where I was the subject. And the subject was not kind. The Sunday argument had started because Paula had arrived at dinner with a mild fever, and I had decided she could stay up a little longer before putting her bed. Mauricio had said he preferred she go to bed immediately. That in itself was an ordinary parenting disagreement. The kind every couple with children has, and that gets resolved at some intermediate point. What was not ordinary was when Mauricio, at a moment in the argument where the temperature had risen a little, said that it was not the first time I had prioritized my convenience over the children's well-being when they were sick. I stopped. I asked him where that came from. He told me it did not come from any specific place, that it was a general observation. I told him it did not sound like a general observation. It sounded like something someone had told him, and that if he could give me a description of when I had prioritized my convenience over the children's well-being when they were sick, I wanted him to give it to me. Mauricio was silent for a moment. Then he mentioned a specific episode from 2 years ago, an episode one remembered perfectly, an episode where Andres had had a fever that had come down with medication and where I had decided to still go to a work meeting because Mauricio was home and the pediatrician had said it was an ordinary viral illness that did not require special attention. I asked him how he knew about that episode that way, because the way he described it was not the way I had lived it. It was the way someone who had not been present, but who had received a version of events would have described it. Mauricio did not respond immediately, and his silence told me more than any answer he could have given. I told him I needed to see his phone, not aggressively, with the clarity of someone who has understood something and needs to confirm what they have understood. Mauricio looked at me for a moment. Then he handed me the phone. What I read in the message thread between Mauricio and his mother over the next 20 minutes was the most revealing and most painful thing I have read about myself in 40 years of life. Not because the messages were violent, but because they were precise. Guadalupe had built over years a narrative about me as a mother that took isolated incidents, decontextualized them, and presented them to Mauricio as evidence of a pattern. The Andres fever episode presented as me choosing work over my sick children, a time when Paula had arrived at school without breakfast because she had forgotten to tell me she had emptied the pantry of what she liked, presented as negligence on my part. A comment I had made at a family gathering about children needing more autonomy, presented as me not wanting to take care of them. Each small incident, each thing that can happen in any family, taken out of the context where it was simply life and placed in a narrative where I was the mother who did not prioritize her children. There were messages from Guadalupe that used those words. You do not prioritize your children. With my name, about me, in messages to my husband. There were responses from Mauricio that were not from someone defending his wife. They were from someone listening and, in some cases, adding his own concern. There was a message from 6 months ago where Mauricio said that sometimes he thought I did not enjoy motherhood as much as he had expected. A message he had sent to his mother, not to me. I put the phone on the table. Mauricio said nothing. I did not either for a time. What I felt had no simple name. It was the superposition of several things that could not be separated. The anger about Guadalupe's messages, the more specific and harder betrayal of Mauricio's, and something more like pain than anger, the image of my husband sending that message to his mother instead of talking to me. I told Mauricio that night I was not going to have that conversation, that I needed time, that what I had just read required more than I could process in a night where Paula was sick and where both of us were in an emotional state that was not the right one for the conversation we needed to have. I told him tomorrow, early, and that we were going to talk about all of it. Mauricio nodded, without trying to start the conversation that night, which was also information. Monday morning's conversation was the longest and hardest of 13 years of marriage. I did not start it with accusations. I started it with questions. I asked him how long he had been talking to his mother about me that way. He told me he did not know exactly, that they had been conversations that had been happening. I asked him whether he had initiated those conversations or whether they had been initiated by Guadalupe. He told me they had been initiated by Guadalupe, that at some point she had told him she was concerned about something she had noticed, and that he had listened because she was his mother and because it worried him. I asked him why at no point those concerns had reached me, why he had not told me his mother had those observations, why he had not asked me directly about the episodes Guadalupe had described. Mauricio took a while. He told me he had thought they were his mother's concerns that might not be objective, that he had not wanted to create a conflict between me and her unnecessarily, that at some point he had stopped thinking about it actively and the messages with his mother had become a dynamic he had not questioned. I told him the problem was not only what Guadalupe had said. The problem was that he had had information about how his mother saw me, how she described me, and had chosen not to share it with me. That I had lived 13 years in a relationship where an important person in his family had a narrative about me that affected how he saw me in certain moments, and that I had made partnership and family decisions without knowing that narrative existed. I asked him whether he believed what his mother had told him, whether he believed I did not prioritize my children. Mauricio took too long to answer, and that time was the most honest and most difficult answer of the entire conversation. He told me he did not completely believe it, that there were moments where he had felt that he and I had different parenting styles, and that in those moments his mother's messages had given shape to doubts he otherwise would not have known how to name. I told him that answer was honest, and that it was exactly the problem, that his mother had provided the language for doubts Mauricio had, that language had arrived without context, without my version, without the possibility of me being able to respond. That 13 years of parenting decisions had been partially filtered through a narrative I had never been able to refute because I had never known it existed. What followed was a process that has not yet finished. We started couples therapy the week after that conversation, not because the marriage was broken, but because what had come out was too much to process alone. The therapist helped us separate the layers. The Guadalupe layer, what she had done, why she had done it, and how Mauricio was going to manage his relationship with her in a way that protected our marriage without destroying the relationship with his mother. The Mauricio layer, why he had participated in that dynamic for years, what he had needed that the dynamic gave him, and what it meant for our relationship that he had chosen to share his doubts with his mother before with me. My layer, what it meant for me to have been judged in secret for years in my own home, and how to process that without anger, making decisions I did not want it to make. The conversation with Guadalupe I had 3 weeks later. Mauricio was present. We had talked with the therapist about how to have it. It was not a confrontation. It was a conversation where I told Guadalupe I had read the messages and wanted her to know that I knew, that I was not asking her to like the way I raised my children, that I was asking her that conversations about my way of raising them have only one possible destination, me. That if she had observations about how I managed the children, she make them directly to me. That if she could not do that with me, that she not make them with Mauricio. That the space between her and Mauricio was not the place to build an image of me that I could not refute. Guadalupe listened. She said she had acted with genuine concern for her grandchildren. I told her I understood that. and that it did not change what I was asking. 7 months have passed. The marriage exists and is in a real process of reconstruction, not of what existed before, but of something different that has more difficult conversations and fewer assumptions about what the other thinks. With Guadalupe, the relationship is colder than before, not because there is open war, but because what there is now between us does not pretend to be what it is not. It is functional distance with honesty about what it is. That is also something. While what I take from this story has parts for different people. For those who recognize themselves in my position, if in a couple argument your husband or wife says something they could not know if someone had not told them, that information deserves to be followed. Not as paranoia, as honest curiosity about what conversations are happening about you in your own environment without your knowledge. And if you discover there is a narrative about you that has been circulating without you being able to respond to it, you have the right to put it on the table. Not to destroy relationships, so that the decisions made in your family are based on the complete version of reality and not the version someone else chose to tell. For those who recognize themselves in Mauricio's position, when someone in your family has observations about your partner, the place where those observations should live is not in a private message thread. It is in a direct conversation with your partner where they can respond. Listening to those observations without sharing them with your partner is not protecting them. It is taking sides without giving them the opportunity to participate in the debate. And that has consequences for trust that are harder to repair than the discomfort of the conversation you avoided. If this story reached you, comment. Have you had to set limits with your partner's family about how they talk about you with them? Like if you believe couples should have an explicit conversation about how they handle family of origin observations about the other person. Subscribe for more real stories. Share with someone who is navigating a difficult dynamic with their in-laws and who needs a language to name it. Reflection to take with you. Loyalty in marriage does not mean you cannot have honest conversations with your family of origin about your partner. It means those conversations do not replace the conversations you need to have with your partner. When the doubts you have about your husband or wife find form first in another person's mouth and not in a direct conversation between the two of you, something in the couple's communication needs attention. That is the symptom that matters, not the messages.